Greetings, good afternoon, good morning, and greetings to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Really excited to be here today. We have a very interesting and special guest, and we're going to dive straight in. So a couple of quick points. Switch your mobiles off, although we can't hear them, they will interrupt you. If there is a fire, please, you can look at this webinar again, please run. And otherwise, we are ready to dive straight in. So how does the U.S. Secret Service combat ransomware? And actually, it's more than just ransomware, but advanced ransomware. I'm really happy and excited to be joined by Mark Grantz. He's going to introduce himself in a few minutes. Chris Payne, obviously myself with the blue turban. And then we also have, it's a jam-packed session today, Ronnie Wolf from GFI and Brian Lang from Lastline. So we're going to go straight in. A couple of housekeeping rules about the mobiles. I've already given you that. But also, we need interaction from the audience. So we have several questions that we're going to put to the audience. Please do take part and ask questions from Mark. If he can't answer them, he will not, obviously. But if he can, Mark is more than happy to take a lot of questions from the audience. Okay, I normally start with alternative titles, something very unique to the way I present, gives a little bit of insight into what went into the production of this webinar. The one title was, oh no, not another boring webinar on ransomware. This definitely is not one of those. The other one is, I'm just thinking on behalf of Mark, if I tell you something, I will have to blank, blank, blank. I'm sure there are some things that he just cannot share. And then the other one was probably what Mark does. I'm not sure if the bad guys are all dressed like that, but catching the bad guys all in a day's work. There was one more title, and hopefully we're going to uncover some secrets, which we can use against Mark. I'm just kidding. Uncovering the secret life of a malware or ransomware investigator. And we have the wonderful photo of Mr. Grantz there. So a polite reminder to everybody, do take part in the survey. There are several questions that we have for you to answer. Obviously, the panelists are also going to be taking part. And towards the end, your feedback would be very much appreciated. We're going straight in. This is myself, Blue Turban. You can check me out on LinkedIn. Do connect with me. Won't spend too much time on myself over there. I love cyber, but more importantly, we are talking about the gentleman sitting there. He is not sharing any passwords, I assure you. I've checked the photo. I hand it over to Mark.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everyone. Thank you, Amar, for the invitation.
You're welcome, sir.
Yep. So I guess just a little bit of background about myself. I've been with the Secret Service for a little over 17 years, over 24 years in law enforcement. I got into forensics. I was a forensics analyst pretty early on in my career. Kind of conveyed that into some cases involving Eastern European hackers and credit card fraud, and that's kind of been my passion ever since. Our agency, as most of you probably know, is more known for protection, protecting the president and foreign leaders when they visit the United States. So in a sense, you're a little bit like a fish out of water here because you constantly have to battle for resources, for assets, for budget, probably similar to most of you that are working for businesses. Again, our number one priority is protecting the president. That's always going to be number one. That's what we're known for. But realistically, like I said, we've got a small group of agents around the world that are very talented and very driven, and it's definitely a focus of this agency and something that we've had great success over the years.
Mark, thank you. So a quick one, if I do interrupt any one of the speakers or the panelists, it's only because, one, we are either running out of time, two, there's a question, or three, we have many other things to cover today. So Mark, thank you for the introduction. And like I said, there are many other panelists, but we're going to dive straight in. and this is a survey question for the audience. Threat of ransomware, if you look at the screen, you should be able to vote. Threat of ransomware is overplayed. There are more important things to worry about. Mark, what are your comments on this? Is threat of ransomware overplayed?
It's interesting. Obviously, I can't give you a yes or no question on this one.
Mm-hmm.
As ransomware started and it was just individuals being attacked, mom and pops at home having their pictures from summer vacation locked up. From a Secret Service standpoint, that's not really going to get much of our attention. Obviously, as we've all seen over the last couple of years, ransomware has exploded, and it is now becoming more advanced, more targeted, going after bigger entities. So from that sense, it's not overplayed. We don't sense that, again, the direction that it's going, that it's overplayed. Again, if your grandmother got her laptop locked up, there's not much I'm going to be able to do with it. But if you're a significant, decent-sized company, then we're definitely going to look into it. And we're always looking. We've got a pretty good presence, and we'll get on this topic a little more as we go along about being on those dark websites and working in an undercover capacity and cooperating individuals. So that's where our focus mainly lies.
Can I briefly ask you a quick, as in a binary, if you don't mind, binary answer. Is ransomware getting more advanced?
Absolutely.
What about you, Brian? Is ransomware getting more advanced in your experience?
Oh yeah, we see data from over 100,000 firewalls through our partners every day, and we see malware just adding more and more behaviors and evasion specifically, going from having one evasion type to having 5 to 10 evasion types.
Wow.
So they're definitely getting more and more tools in their arsenal.
Excellent. If I may ask, Ronnie, if you can chime in with a binary answer, is ransomware getting more advanced?
Absolutely. So we see it with the last threats. It doesn't matter if it was notPetya or other upcoming threats. Instead of only try to get money from them, they loading different modules. They try to use it through different distribution ways and so on. So absolutely agree that it will getting more advanced.
Okay, thank you. Chris, I'll bring you in a minute. But Mark, threat intelligence, and again, this is a survey question that we're going to switch to very quickly. Threat intelligence, how important is threat intel in fighting or trying to fight this kind of crime?
From our perspective, it's kind of the cornerstone of what we do. We've got in fact, I was part of this entity. We've got a cyber intel section at our headquarters division that collects information from all over the world. Anytime anybody's arrested, we're reaching out to that law enforcement agency to try to gain whatever we can. From a business perspective, it's come up a lot lately. I've had a number of meetings with some very large banks that are beginning their own cyber threat intel. My concern on one hand is when you look at a lot of breaches, ransomware, it's the basics that are being dropped and are the cause of the problem. So in some sense, I would like to see maybe more resources put towards solving those problems. But on the same token, if the threat intel group can give a clear picture to the C-suite level officers of what the threat is, and that helps them make better decisions, then absolutely, there's definitely value there.
Thank you, Mark. Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it goes back to the old saying that no man is an island, and of course, if we all attempt to be the masters at detection and prevention, then we're just going to fall down. It's all about collective research, collective sharing, and in situations where we do share defense mechanisms or ways of preventing certain types of attacks, it means that everybody else can respond in the same way, and we can minimize the effects of those attacks. And if you take something like the WannaCry attack as an example, it was just a Windows update in most cases that could have prevented that from taking place. And that information being spread quite quickly meant that attack was not so much limited, but I guess limited in its total potential.
And I know, Mark, this is going to be a bit of a controversial question. I do apologize, but related to threat intel. I'm going to put you on the spot there. In your opinion, are governments, not yours necessarily, but generally, there is a flip side to that, which I think businesses don't appreciate the true value of threat intel. But are governments sharing enough threat intel with the, if I may, the regular company, not just finance, but the average, Joe, if I may, the average business? Is that happening? Is that starting to happen? Any insight on that?
Yeah, I think there's been a definite improvement over the years as people become more aware. We've got ISACs is the acronym here in the United States, the Information Sharing Groups. I think the service does a pretty good job through our Electronic Crimes Task Force model to share information. I will say there are times, though, when we reach out to companies to initiate a conversation, and I've had instances where we've seen indications of a breach, and we reach out to a company and say, hey, we need you to look at this IP address. We feel that there's a problem there, and we kind of get the cold shoulder. So the reason I do these type of events, and I speak fairly regularly, I'd like to create that relationship. I'd much rather meet you in a conversation like this or in a conference that I'm attending this afternoon than when there is a problem. But I definitely think there's an improvement in the information sharing, at least from what I've seen.
Should organizations look for threat intel on the dark web? There's another question also, but this is, Mark, first to you. What's your opinion on the dark web? Because they are companies, if I may, selling intelligence, and people are, in my opinion, wrongly going out of the dark web to seek intelligence. Is that a good practice? Is the intel valuable from there?
Yeah, I think there is valuable intel. I would strongly caution any company from just kind of blindly going into an expedition like that. If you're going to contract with a third-party vendor that does that, you're obviously far more safe as far as your exposure. Once again, though, it in my opinion, and this in some ways kind of flies in the face of some of the other things here. Yeah. If you're spending millions of dollars in building your own threat intel, I would almost rather see you hire more qualified people and invest in your infrastructure and solve the problems that are easily solved before you go looking for more.
So basically if I may rephrase that a little, get the basic cyber hygiene done properly? Absolutely, because it's almost disturbing at times when you see some of these breaches and you see the cause behind the breach. That's where I would rather see the investment being made. Yeah. So very briefly, thank you, Mark. Very briefly, Brian, bring you in on this. Anything on the dark web? Should people look at the dark web for intel on general threat intelligence?
Yeah, I'll echo what Mark said. I think take care of the basics first. Get a firm understanding of what you can get in the normal areas before you start delving into areas where you may end up doing more damage than harm going into areas that you're not comfortable with. Excellent. And Ronnie, what are your thoughts? Same thing? Same kind of basics approach?
Yes. I think the dark web is more for the advanced users who know what they are doing. For sure, it could be a quite valuable source for getting to see trends, maybe to get more information out of it. But the basics is the most important things, to cover them on official sources and then take a look in that.
Excellent.
If you feel more comfortable with.
I wanted to share one. I mean, I keep hearing, blame the human. It's all the human's fault. I personally believe, yes, cyber hygiene is important, but we have to, if I may, empower the human so that he or she can at least, be our early, what's the word? The early warning system, if I may, right? If we don't empower the human workforce and they do discover there's a ransomware floating around, how do we enable an efficient early warning system? constantly blaming the human is, in my opinion, pointless, because a lot of webinars are going, oh, human awareness, oh, we got to look at a boring PowerPoint. But, I mean, ransomware is going to still succeed. And unless we enable the human element to take part in the defense and the detection mechanism, I'm going to get off my soapbox now. and we'll carry on. Mark, I think, again, everyone's really excited to understand. If you don't mind, can you start by explaining a little about what you do? You know, what's your average day like, please?
Well, as I think you probably maybe caught on my bio page, I'm the supervisor here in the Washington Field Office for our Electronic Crimes Task Force. Our headquarters division is right down the street, so we work very closely with them. I'm responsible for Washington, D.C., Virginia, Maryland, the national capital region. So any type of cyber response for any incidents that occur within our jurisdiction, we have kind of primary overlook on. But again, because of our close relationship with our cyber intel section and our headquarters division, we tend to branch out a little bit and support them in some of their international efforts. So typical day, I've got a squad. I've got individuals. Actually, I've got an individual that's on a temporary assignment in Europol right now that's working with their JCAT. So we've got a tremendous relationship with the Dutch and the rest of the folks there at Europol, sharing information. Again, a large part of our work is online undercover activities. We've got agents working in undercover capacities, as well as cooperating individuals that go online, look for the latest trends, look for indicators of new breaches, of new databases being sold, and we try to parse out as much information as we can, in part to share with private industry, and then also in part, obviously, the attempt to identify these individuals. And that's ultimately our goal is attribution and prosecution.
So interesting you mentioned that, Mark, because I'm of the opinion a lot of organizations, unless they're really large and well-resourced, should leave attribution to law enforcement. Am I correct in my view?
Yeah, absolutely. But I would also ask all of our viewers out there, if you have valuable data that we can look at, please share it with us. Again, we had an instance just a few months ago where a server at an organization had been compromised, and they were utilizing RDP to potentially use that server as a proxy. And when we reached out to that organization to ask them, hey, can you look at this IP address, see if there's anything unusual, see if there's any unusual activity, and get back to us, their response was, send us a subpoena.
Oh, wow.
So we're trying to help them. We're trying to develop our cases. We're not asking you to allow us to put a full wiretap on a machine. We just want you to take a look and report back to us. Tell us what you're seeing suspicious. You should be able to tell what is customer data versus, hey, this doesn't belong here. And I don't see the problem with sharing the stuff that doesn't belong here without me having to go in front of a judge and request paper.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we could carry on that debate for some time, but I think, I'm seeing some green shoots of folks starting to share, but I think there's a cultural issue here, an age issue, if I may. Historically, sharing information has always been seen as detrimental, to business advantage, I guess, that could be one of the reasons, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And that, once again, this is why I like coming to these events to share our information, to introduce myself, to let people know that I understand many of the concerns. I haven't worked in private industry since I was probably bagging groceries 25 years ago, but I understand some of the concerns that they have. And when you have a relationship that's already built on trust, an individual, an organization can say, hey, this is what we're seeing. Can you ask around but scrub our name from this, and we
Yeah.
get that, and that's where the value of sharing information really comes to play.
Yeah, totally. So, Mark, I have an audience question before I go into have we lost the battle, but the survey question for the audience, please, is the most important control against ransomware. The most important control against ransomware. I mean, you could call it a trick question, but we just want to see what the audience thinks about this. So I've opened the survey. Please do take part. And the question again is the most important control against ransomware. So we're going to go back, Mark. And I mean, maybe it's the wrong question, but I guess I could rephrase it by saying, are we winning the cyber battle, if I may? Is that a good question? What are your thoughts?
I think I'm probably a very small part of that battle, and quite honestly, I drive home on a daily basis thinking we're losing. But there are times when I step back and just look at what our agency has accomplished in the last 10, 15 years, and I can say that we have made some significant advances. We're still behind. I think we still need to invest more in cybersecurity, in prevention, in a lot of different things. But just like everybody else in this audience here, we're faced with budgetary constraints. I can't go to our headquarters and just ask for 20 or 30 more bodies and $50 million.
Right.
I'm sure everybody would love to do. So it's the trick is the secret sauce is being as absolutely efficient as you can and productive as you can with the resources that you have.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, resources. Obviously, we could spend a full day on talking about how do you upskill or even find the right resources. So just a quick response to the survey. 66% to the survey question of the most important control reckon all of the above. The choices were encrypted and offline backups and intelligence, effective incident response, and immediate and swift patching, although nobody actually selected patching at all, which is quite interesting. So we shall share that, and it's still going up. 68% people who are voicing their opinion think obviously there is no one control to rule them all. There are multiple controls that are required here. Brian, you briefly from your experience, if you're there, Brian, do we think businesses are losing the battle? Very short answer if you can.
Yeah, I think we're definitely the attackers are coming up with tools faster than we're doing. With I think goes to Mark's. You really have to work as fast and optimally as you can because there are so many new attacks coming in, You do have to have a layered defense, but you also need to make sure, for example, that your team knows what the process is when something happens, so that you don't have to necessarily think about it. You can go through the actions, and you need to make sure you have even basic things like backups. So many companies we run into, once they get hit with ransomware, they realize their backups don't work. So, I mean, it's just, again, going back to the basics, you need to have that strong foundation.
Chris Payne, I have a question for you. Why has the audience only, a very small percentage of the audience only selected patching as the most important control against ransomware? I'm putting you on the spot, Chris.
Yeah, it's a great question. I was also surprised at the low response for patching, considering what we've seen in the past 6 months. I can only assume that people have gone for the safe answer, which is all the above. And I think that if I was to answer this question, I'd probably go for that multi-factored answer as well. If I was to pick one particular answer, I actually think I would go for incident response. I think that, it's a cat and mouse game, isn't it? You don't have anything to prevent and respond to if something hasn't happened already. So, and it's always going to be that way. Not everything can be prevented. It's really about how you respond to these events. And if you've got a proper incident response plan, where you can roll back to one of the backup sets that you've taken, or if you can move to a redundant system so that you can continue operating properly, that's always going to be the better option. Prevention for 100% is just a futile task.
So thank you, Chris. Mark, if you can't select all of the above, but which one control would you say is very important? Patching, incident response, threat intel, or encrypted and offline backups?
You're going to make me pick one, huh?
Yeah, only one. Not all of the above.
not all of the above. To me, encryption is far the most underutilized tool that I've seen.
Okay.
And again, you see it time and time again with data breaches in the news, data breaches that we've investigated, that the data at rest is just sitting there at rest, not encrypted. To me, there's really no excuse why that data can't be better protected, with the assumption that everybody's a target. Theoretically, everybody could be hacked. Everybody in this room. Why not take that extra step to secure the data?
Fair enough. So encrypted and offline backup. So even if the ransomware do get to it, it's basically already encrypted.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you. Brian, if you're there, what are your very quick one choice?
I'd have to go the offline backups, especially for ransomware. You're going to get hit. One large bank, they had all the technology in the world. None of it detected anything. Fortunately, we detected it and we had the decryption key. But when they went back to look at their backups, 55,000 files encrypted in 5 minutes. If they hadn't had versioned backups, they would have had to pay the ransom. Interesting.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Ronnie, if you're there, are you there, Ronnie? What one option would you choose? One control?
Yeah. Yes, I will totally agree with the backup. We have seen so many customers, for sure, all the other technologies should also be in place. However, as Chris already mentioned, we cannot protect against everything. So means at the end, a proper backup, and as well what Mark mentioned, an encrypted backup. So if we are getting hacked, that these data cannot be read by everybody, is an important thing, for sure.
Okay, I mean, I'm going to put myself on the spot. I guess I'm going to say, yeah, okay, we've done the backups because you guys are voting for it. I'm going to say I think we really need to be prepared on how do you respond, incident response, because things are going to go wrong. From experience, I think everyone here agrees there is no 100% security. So from my experience, majority of organizations, large and small, in the ostrich symptom or syndrome, they believe they've done everything else, but they're never going to be hit. So their incident response is always the most lacking, if I may. So in my opinion, I'm going to go for effective incident response, subject with caveats, everything else must be done. Excellent. But a quick readout from the audience, 67% still think it's all of the above. Patching has got the least, and encrypted backups and incident response have got an equal 10% footing. I'm going to look at some questions from the audience here. For small and medium businesses, tight security budgets mean less money. Given that fact, does user awareness training provide the best ROI? Mark, a quick answer to that?
I don't know if it's the best, but it's definitely high. High on the list. It's something that I think more companies should invest in. Okay. Here in the service, we do it occasionally. It's kind of a yearly thing. You go online, you thumb through a quick presentation. My preference is something more engaging.
I totally agree. Very briefly, Chris, binary user awareness provide the best ROI?
I definitely up there. I think it's a good technique to have. If you look at things like the Verizon report, they're showing that personalization phishing attacks are increasing significantly. So you're looking at spear phishing, email, Skype messages, things like that. Messages all being used on a personalized basis to attract people to download ransomware. So I think user awareness training definitely sits at the top.
Okay, next one. Ronnie, quick answer to that. User awareness training is good ROI?
Yes, absolutely. Short enough.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. With attacks coming in through email so often, it's an easy defense that will help even users at home.
I'm going to go with what I said earlier. I think user awareness, yes. However, we need to enable and empower the end user to be, even if you're a small business, to quickly and effectively raise an alert. Yes. So that's questions answered. Next one. In your experience of the organizations that have claimed to have a viable incident response capability, how many of those have failed to respond effectively in the event of a ransomware attack? That's a open-ended question. Anyone wants to take that? Anyone?
This is Brian. I'll just chime in with something.
Go on.
You do need to have your IR process defined because I think I've seen companies go in where the IR team that they brought in wasn't able to help them, but it was also because of the expectations and who they brought in. It's very different. You know, are you looking for somebody to clean up? Are you looking for somebody to do forensic investigation? These are all very different skills, and you need to determine, you know, there's only so much they can do. If you don't have backups and the data's already encrypted, what do you expect them to do? So you really have to have a clear response process.
Excellent. Mark, I'm going to skip one survey question for now, and I'm going to go. Actually, let me open that question, and then I'm going to go into the thing that you mentioned about the takedowns. So the question for the audience, which I'm going to open now, is government initiatives like sharing threat intel are an important component in the fight against modern ransomware. So I think this chimes in with a bit of the threat intel question. Government initiatives like sharing threat intel are an important, part of the fight against ransomware. So this is open to the audience. But Mark, I wanted to go into this. How many takedowns have you had? And you've mentioned that you've had the opportunity to sit down and speak with, if I may, interview a number of Eastern European hackers. So can you shed some light into how you have managed that, and what have you got from there?
Yeah. So takedowns, kind of a vague term. Kicking the door in and grabbing people, probably 2 or 3 of those.
Okay.
But actual cases, probably close to a couple dozen, and some significant one. I was one of the very first people to sit down with TJX when they first had their issue back in what was that, 07, 08, somewhere around that.
Yeah, TJX. Okay.
Was involved in that. Also involved in the arrest of an individual out in California. If you want to read about it, the book is called Kingpin by Kevin Paulson. No, I don't get any royalties on it. And if you do read it, you won't see my name in there because the service declined to be interviewed on that one. But,
sorry, Mark, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry, the book is called Kingpin.
Kingpin, yes.
Okay, right.
By Kevin Paulson.
Yeah.
But over the years, I have had the chance, and probably most importantly to your point, is I've had the chance to sit down with half a dozen or so hackers, mainly, again, Eastern Europe is kind of our area of focus. A couple things that really jump out at me, sitting down and talking to these guys, from an early age, they do absolutely everything they can to hide themselves. And they're not just hiding themselves from Western law enforcement. They don't want Russian law enforcement to know about them either, because if you're a hacker and it becomes well known, then the FSB is going to knock on your door, and you're going to be faced with the choice of either working for them or a plush vacation home in Siberia. So
interesting. How are they doing that, if I may interrupt you? So you're saying they're focusing on staying anonymous, covert, surreptitious. Yeah. But what, if I may, can you share, how are they achieving that? Are they, it's an objective, but are they achieving it very well?
Yeah, Yes and no. Again, the ones that I've talked to are the ones that got caught, so they didn't achieve it. They didn't achieve it completely. I will say they made it hard on us. Generally speaking, it a lot of times takes years to start with a nickname, on a message board to eventually being able to prove that nickname belongs to this individual, and even then, because of the extradition laws that we face, oftentimes we have to kind of sit back and wait for them to travel to a friendlier country, and then we kind of jump out of the bushes and grab them.
Interesting.
So, but those much the way we have, they're kind of open-ended as far as their projects go. They don't have a boss looking over their shoulder demanding things, so they're able to work on a target. And if in a couple days or a week or so they're not making any progress, then they just drop that target. They go on to the next one. But they're constantly learning, and that's what makes them so effective. Between the learning that they do on their own, plus the information sharing, I'll say by and far, they are far better at sharing information than we are. And through these forums, through these darknet marketplaces, knowing that everybody's anonymous, they have no issues with, hey, I'm running into this problem. What do you see? What have you done? So even if they really want into your company and you have some very good perimeter defenses and they give up, maybe 6 months later they come across somebody that was able to defeat similar defenses, and now they're going to circle back and make another attempt at you. So they're persistent, and again, the information sharing, they don't have multi-MLAT treaties and Europol and bureaucracy and some of the other obstacles that law enforcement typically face. And of course, in the end, there's no shortage of vulnerable systems.
You're describing the ideal employee here, Mark, for some reason.
Yeah, it's a good business, I guess.
Constantly learning, information sharing, working with anybody and everybody.
There's quite a few parallels.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
And the code writing, I guess, is the question that always comes up, right? Are you saying that just basically their hunger for information and money, I guess, is driving them to learn all of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, one of the gentlemen that I talked to, obviously using that term loosely, just a couple weeks ago, for the most part self-taught, and obviously Google is a wonderful tool. You can learn just about anything. He did study computer engineering in college, but found it rather boring.
Wow.
And so dropped out early, and again, sat at home, kind of an introvert, wasn't flashy with the money or the success that he was gathering, but just a very driven individual with a gift for coding and for being persistent and for being creative in the ways that he did his attacks.
That's pretty amazing insight. But all this time, organizations try to box the risk into something that, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Should we spend some money? Should we not? Whilst these guys are just... is there one single thing that drives these guys, motivates these folks?
Curiosity obviously is a big part of it. I think that gets people like us involved at an early age. I started out, and I'm not probably nowhere near as technical as everybody on this, but I had the old Atari 2600 way back in the day, and trying to communicate with my grandfather through a 14 baud modem. But I think these people like that, like myself, like everybody else here, just have that natural curiosity to try to do one better than the next guy. And then you throw in a little bit of money if you get good at it, and it's a pretty potent lure that these guys kind of fall into the trap. And of course, especially the Eastern Europeans, they don't have near the sympathy for the rich Western countries. Especially when you're looking at it, again, our main focus is credit card fraud and attacks on financial infrastructure. There's not a lot of sympathy, and to some degree, I don't feel a lot of sympathy at times too for these massive banks that are making billions of dollars.
I understand. Yeah. So that kind of probably does not, I guess, probably enables their actions, if I may, instead of dampening their actions, because they feel they're can I put it, they're robbing the rich, you know.
Yeah. It's the analogy that I kind of use at times is if you think of a headline in the newspaper that says, you know, Russian organized crime steals from cars at shopping mall. The image that jumps into our head is a bunch of Eastern Europeans breaking out windows or using devices to capture the the code that your key fob is sending and sneaking in and stealing purses and money and iPhones and all this stuff. But the Russian viewpoint when they read that headline is a bunch of lazy, dumb Americans leaving their windows down with a $100 bill sitting on the seat. And they're just walking down. They're just walking down the aisle and reaching in the window and pulling that $100 bill out.
Pulling it out, yeah. Wow.
You know, it's that easy. Again, the guy that I talked to a couple weeks ago, his go-to tool was SQL injection. That's been around for 20 plus years, and it's still effective.
His go-to tool is SQL injection.
Yes. So the fact, and it goes back to my point earlier that let's shore up the basics first before we start, you know, investing in the latest and greatest shiny object. That's where I would start.
And one final thing on this, I mean, I know we could probably have another webinar just on this topic, but has any, from your experience with interviewing these folks, is there one thing that they really despise? Am I making sense in my question? Is there one control that they really don't like that disables them?
No, you know what? I haven't really picked up on that. Interestingly enough, and kind of tying back to our ransomware discussion, a lot of the guys that I've talked to aren't big fans of ransomware. They look at that as kind of amateurish. And you know, kind of a script kiddie. There's not a whole lot of respect for the ransomware community. Ultimately, everybody's making money, and again, they're targeting the Western businesses, so they don't feel too bad about it. But you know, these forums, these cybercrime forums, are built on reputation, built on respect. And the true leaders, the top tier folks, aren't usually the ones that are just running around spamming millions of people with ransomware emails. It's a little more challenging when you're targeting specific companies and going after the big score. But although even the hospitals, as we've seen, have been targeted, even some of those guys have a bit of a soft spot for the hospitals and feel that these guys.
Medical.
Yeah, nobody wants to see somebody, somebody's life end because the whole hospital infrastructure was shut down. So again, those people are kind of frowned upon.
Okay, so just to summarize, I mean, going back to cyber hygiene, rather than one particular control, I mean, these guys are possibly laughing and still succeeding because of just bad basic cybersecurity hygiene.
Yeah, and again, there's so many targets out there. It's near impossible for everybody to be 100% as good as they can be. And even if we got to that point, that would just make the bad guys work a little harder to be a little more creative.
I understand. So just to recap, Kingpin, Kevin Paulson, although you're not featured there by name, but you were involved in that the TJX investigation. So those who want to take a look, I'll probably take a look myself. Thank you.
Yeah. It's two different cases. TJX and the Kingpin book are two different cases, but yeah, those
right.
that I've been involved in.
Excellent. So I got a couple of questions. Do websites like Cerber do more harm than good? I guess a binary answer. Otherwise, we could be here for long. Meaning, do hackers benefit from their search info rather than ethical hackers? Mark, yes or no? Do websites do more harm than good, like Shodan HQ?
I'm going to say yes.
They do more harm than good. Okay. Next one, Chris Payne, more harm than good, yes or no?
Yeah, I'll agree with Mark on that. I think they do.
Okay. Brian, Shodan does more harm than good, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, Ronnie, Shodan does more harm than good.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Am I the only one who thinks Shodan does no harm or good? Because it's a research website, folks. But that's what I guess this is for, because I think if Shodan wasn't there are probably, I'm sure Mark also knows of Shodan-like stuff in the dark web. So, you know, if Shodan isn't there openly, then other websites that will pop up. I'd love to hear from the audience, actually, if a yes would mean Shodan does more harm and a no means Shodan does not do more harm. Let's see if I'm the only lone voice over here. It's a good question. Thank you for that. The next question, we all know bad guys collaborate, blah, 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 but good guys are reluctant to share. The question, and this is very interesting, is regulation a way to address collaboration? Wow. Mark, in a few sentences.
I would love to see more regulation. I'm not a big proponent of government butting into business and so forth, but in the United States specifically, a handful of states have their own cyber legislation. Many states have nothing, and it's a very hodgepodge system. The government itself, the federal government itself, has talked for years about kind of creating some general rules and regulations. I would love to see that because the inconsistency is a constant battle.
So yes to regulation for collaboration.
Yes, please.
Excellent. Chris Payne, yes to regulation for collaboration.
I'd like to see collaboration more, but I don't know if I can say that I think regulation should be a part of that. So I guess I'm going to sit somewhere in the middle.
Okay, you are on the fence here. Brian, yes to collaboration for Sorry, what am I saying? Excuse me. Yes to regulation for collaboration. Yes or no?
Yeah, I'm all for collaboration, but I'm not sure that most of the people doing the regulations comprehended enough to come up with anything useful.
Okay, that's interesting. Ronnie, yes to regulation for collaboration.
Yes, I agree with Brian. So in general, yes, but the regulation part maybe.
Okay, actually, I'm going to sit on the fence here. I don't like regulation too much, but unless businesses collaborate, there is not actually going to be, a good threat intel. So I don't know how to achieve it. Either we educate kids from day one, hey, you must share, which they probably already do, more sharing than us. But something's got to be done about increasing collaboration. As Mark was saying, the bad guys, if I may, the cyber criminals are sharing much, much more than any of us businesses are. I'm going to be on the fence on this one. So that's answered. The Shodan HQ is answered. What is the best time to notify authorities about a breach? I would say refer to GDPR, 72 hours in the UK. Is there any good time apart from regulation? Very quickly, Mark, what's the best time to notify authorities about a breach?
Sooner rather than later.
Agreed, fully. I think everyone hopefully agrees on this. We got I know, Mark, you wanted to stay out of this, so I'm just going to give the feedback. The survey to the audience was governments must actively develop their own advanced ransomware so that they can unleash it during times of cyber war. 57% of the audience thinks, nope, this should not happen. Interesting. But 47 or 42% rather think that this should happen. Very interesting feedback. So I'm going to stop that, and we have a final question for the audience, which is blaming the NSA for WannaCry. This is my personal opinion, which is why I asked it. Is missing the bigger picture. Criminals will find and develop similar tools regardless. I actually say I've got a very clear opinion on this. You just can't blame any government because criminals are going to find and develop their own stuff. But let's take what the audience says. The question is blaming the NSA for WannaCry, as in the shadow brokers leak or theft and leak, is missing the bigger picture. Criminals will find develop similar tools regardless. We've got one more question from the hacker. Okay, I'm not going to look at that for now. We've got feedback from the audience. Okay, Mark, any other comments on this, sir? So we're about 10 minutes away from, from the end. I know you wanted to discuss a little bit more about, industry cooperation, and I'm just going to go back to the, this slide that I picked up here as to what are your thoughts? We talked about the question that came out about regulation and collaboration, but do you think it is one of the cornerstones and something that's missing?
Yeah, I think collaboration is, again, as I mentioned earlier, is improving, but I really think that we still have a long way to go. And my emphasis, as I mentioned, is please start collaborating with whichever law enforcement, be it Secret Service, be it FBI, be it NCA, but make yourselves available to them today, tomorrow, next week, when you can just sit down and have a general conversation. Again, establish somewhat of a relationship, somewhat of a trusting bond there. Again, I understand a lot of things about business. You have to be protective of your intellectual property and the way you operate. But I do understand that you can tell me things, and it's not going to end up on a police bulletin board, and it's not going to be shared any further than just the two of us.
Or rather the media getting sight of it. Yeah.
Right. But again, if you wait until you have a problem, and now you're calling me because there's a problem, now there's that additional stress involved. You've got attorneys involved, you've got the board involved. Like I said, I implore CISOs, CTOs, whoever, come out, introduce yourself. And again, it doesn't have to be the Secret Service. Obviously, I think we're the best. But it doesn't have to be us. It can be the FBI. It can be, any of these organizations. Attend the meeting, introduce yourselves, and start that line of communication, because you never know. I may stumble across something next week specific to an organization where there's a posting on a Russian forum that's expressing a vulnerability, and now I immediately know who to call. And at the same token, if you're that organization and you hear something or you're seeing something suspicious, don't hesitate to pick the phone up, call me, and go, hey, we're seeing this type of activity. It doesn't match what we're used to. Are you seeing this anywhere else? It's those informal bonds that is where where we're going to make our best progress.
So from my experience, and I am a CISO as a trusted advisor, and I've been one before. I think one of my challenges is when I go up the chain and recommend this kind of an action, one of the biggest concerns has always been interruption, or rather disruption to business. Am I making sense with that in that statement? What is your comments on that? I mean, does that always happen? Is that a minute, likelihood of that happening?
No, it's understood. Again, we had an instance a while back here, an organization in the D.C. area, and they had some infections. There was ransomware involved, and immediately they started wiping systems. Fortunately, it wasn't valuable data. They were able to just kind of rebuild the system with a new image. But they plowed through a number of systems that I would have loved to got my hands on for additional forensic analysis. But again, I understand the need of that organization to get back up and running again as quickly as possible. So again, is it my preference? No, but I'm not going to have a temper tantrum about it, because again, at this point in my career, I have a fairly good understanding of what businesses are trying to achieve and what is important to them. And sometimes it's maybe not counter to what we're trying to do, but obviously it isn't always in parallel.
Excellent. I've got a question here. Thank you, Mark. So the question is for the gentleman who is from the U.S., which is yourself, Mark, from the government. Which country do they find the majority of ransomware originating from? We have 4 options: Russia, China, Iran. 5 options: Russia, China, Iran, Ukraine, or Romania. Any comments, Mark?
Russia by a large margin, and that's not just my opinion. I think I've seen some some research on that just a few days ago that they were, I think it was like 75% of the new ransomware variants out of 2016 came back. I think that was a Kaspersky study, came back to Russia.
Russia. Wow. Brian, do you have any input on this one?
Yeah, from all the stuff I've seen in our back end and also the Kaspersky, it's Russia as well.
Ronnie, have you seen anything else?
No. My latest statistic is as well Russia is on top of that.
Okay, excellent. That's good input on that. Thank you. As per the view of our expert panelists, which country turns out the most sophisticated ransomware? We have just, actually that's a good question. The most sophisticated ransomware. Mark, would you say in terms of sophistication, is it still the same country?
Yeah. I still believe Russia kind of leads the way in a lot of these areas.
The sophistication. Wow.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. And I guess this is the final. We're going to kind of open it. We just want to go through the last question, which was blaming the NSA. And I think the majority of the audience, 62%, agree with me. We just can't blame the NSA because criminals will develop similar tools regardless. So that's good to know. I think we've covered a huge number of topics here. And we have a few more minutes, obviously. If anybody in the audience does have a question, please do ask. And one more request to the audience is obviously give us feedback. And the green mark is at the smiley face, so you know what the feedback should look like. Obviously, we don't have to. Some final thoughts. So if we start from Ronnie, 30 seconds for final thoughts on this.
I absolutely agree with the audience here. That at the end there's so much more and so much techniques out there, so much knowledge out there that blaming the NSA is definitely not the right way here.
Okay, thank you, Ronnie. Brian, we got to wrap up, so 30 seconds comments from you. So on the whole ransomware, and what do you?
Yeah, I also agree with the audience. There's plenty of tools out there. We need to be focused on how we're going to respond and how we can educate our user community and prepare as proactively as possible and make sure we've got layered defense and layered response.
Okay, Chris Payne, 30 seconds to you, sir, before we hand over to Mark.
Totally agree, and I just want to share some statistics that came out yesterday from NCSC. Since February 2017, 1,131 individual incidents reported to them. 590, which is just a little over half, were classified as significant cyber attacks. So blaming it on one organization, pretty short-sighted.
Excellent. Before I hand over to you, Mark, I'll give you my feedback. I think, yes, ransomware is not going to go away. User education, no doubt, but I still stick on user empowerment. We are investing in a lot of security controls. When we are blaming the user, we need to empower him or her to be the early warning system, if I may. Mark, final comments to you, sir. I know we could be here for another hour. There's one comment saying it's too short, but final comments to you before we end the webinar.
No, again, just thank you for everything. Is my final message. I would again emphasize that master the basics is an overall holistic approach. Don't get too distracted with the latest small shiny object, the silver bullet, because it's not there, at least in my research. So, like I said, master the basics, hire good people, know your networks, and again. Have a relationship, be able to share with law enforcement as well as your other competitors and other businesses that you work with.
Excellent. It looks like you and I are going to have another webinar because more and more audience members are saying we have to do a part 2. So hope to have you back soon, Mark. And like I said to everybody, please do give feedback. Some written feedback would also be useful. And thank you to Mark. From the U.S. Secret Service. Thank you to Brian from Lastline, Ronnie from GFI, Chris Payne from Advanced Cyber Solutions. And obviously this is Amar Singh, and I'm signing off. Thank you, everyone.